Welcome to the Greater Victoria Chambers of Commerce Candidate Forum. My name is Bruce Carter, and I'm the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce and the moderator for today's program. We are conducting these forums as a nonpartisan organization to create dialogue and discussion regarding the election. This is the first of 3 forums that we'll be conducting. The forum for this today is the Esquimalt-Saanich-Sooke riding. I'd like to introduce the candidates we have here with us today. Shari Lukens from the Conservative Party.
Thank you.
Randall Garrison from the NDP.
Hello.
Francis Litman from the Green Party. And David Merner from the Liberal Party. Our format today, there'll be opening statements. Each will be 1 minute. Then there'll be long answers. Each question will be directed at 2 specific candidates. A 1-minute response time will be given to each candidate, and then a 30-second follow-up to the first person who answered that question. Once we've done those, we'll move into the short answer section. These are for all candidates, and they'll be given 30 seconds to respond. Then there will be closing statements in an order that was drawn, and these will be 2 minutes each for the candidates. There are some rules that we put into place. We've asked the candidates to focus on the topic at hand, to respect the time available. There is a timer here that will be providing prompts to the candidates as to when their time is up. The order of the questions and statements have been drawn at random. The candidates were not given the questions in advance. As the moderator, I reserve the right to cut off candidates when their time is up, to ask follow-up questions, to allow another party named in a response to provide a rebuttal, and if necessary, make adjustments to the format to move our way through. Additionally, this session is being monitored on Twitter. Staff are monitoring the Twitter feed and will provide questions to the candidates in the short answer portion. The Twitter hashtag for the event is YYJForum15. So, let's begin. We'll start with the opening statements, 1 minute each. We'll start with Shari Lukens from the Conservative Party.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the Victoria Chamber and to yourself, Bruce, for hosting us today. I have the honor of running as the Conservative candidate in the riding of Esquimalt-Saanich-Sooke. And being raised in Alberta and later choosing to live my adult life here on the West Coast, my life and all that has been afforded to me has been created and shaped by Conservative values. My belief in the power of free enterprise, our communities, and in the social and economic freedoms that we enjoy as Canadians is the foundation of my personal and professional life. As someone from the corporate sector, I believe how a leadership envisions Canada's business community and how they understand each region's economy has never been more important to our future. We've watched Canada evolve from a country where our economic strength was centralized in the east to a more powerful and prosperous Canada where all regions are working with greater prosperity. We need that representation in Esquimalt-Saanich-Sooke.
Thank you. Now an opening comment from Randall Garrison from the NDP.
Thank you. Over the past 4 years, I've seen the damage the Conservatives have done up close, whether that's damage to Canada's international reputation, to fairness for veterans, or to justice for First Nations, or even damage to our democracy itself. As a local MP, I've worked hard to be an effective representative for our riding, coming home every weekend to meet with constituents and to attend local events. I've also been the most successful opposition MP at getting federal funding for projects in my riding. But I'm also asking you to send me back to Ottawa because I have some unfinished business there. I'd like to go back and make sure that those long-promised shipbuilding jobs actually get delivered in this riding. I'd like to go back to continue to work for local environmental protection and to work against increased tanker traffic on this coast. And as the person who led the opposition to Bill C-51 in the House of Commons, I'd like to go back and make sure that that bill gets repealed. So while you're making your choice for your best local representative, I'd also encourage you to consider the bigger picture. Join me, and let's defeat Stephen Harper.
Thank you. Francis Litman from the Green Party.
Thank you. I've been in this riding for 50 years, and I left a well-paid, secure union job at the Times Colonist more than 16 years ago to start my own business. This is my 25th year as a professional photographer, and I understand what it takes to manage people, budgets, and solve problems. And throughout this time, I have volunteered thousands of hours to my community and created one of North America's most successful Earth Week festivals. Each year, thousands of people have attended, and I'm happy to note we consistently finish with less than 2 bags of garbage, showing what's possible. The Green Party values are my values. We know a healthy economy depends on a healthy environment. The Green Party has a realistic plan that will allow us to transition to a robust 21st century economy based on renewable energy and home retrofits. Our platform is fully costed, reviewed by financial experts, and available for everyone to see at greenparty.ca.
Thank you. David Merner from the Liberal Party.
Thanks, Bruce, and thanks to the Chamber of Commerce also for inviting us today. It's a great contribution to democracy, and I really appreciate that. My name's David Merner. I'm the father of four. My four kids have attended Victoria Brodeur School in Esquimalt and Spectrum Community School on the Trans-Canada. I play hockey in my spare time, and I'm a local guy who feels that our riding, Esquimalt-Saanich-Sooke, could be doing better. Sadly, Stephen Harper has the worst economic record of any prime minister since R.B. Bennett in the 1930s, the Great Depression. It's a terrible economic record, and we can do better, and the Liberal Party of Canada has a positive plan laid out by Justin Trudeau on how we're going to do that. The main thing we're going to do is make a major investment, a historic investment in infrastructure. Our plan is to build public transit, seniors facilities, children's care facilities, and invest in our economy. Just today, we've promised $900 million for an innovation economy. That's our commitment. Let's get Esquimalt-Saanich-Sooke moving.
Thank you. We'll now move into the long-form questions. Once again, each question will be directed at two specific candidates, a 1-minute response by each candidate, and then a 30-second follow-up by the first candidate. The first question goes to the Conservatives and the Liberals. The question is, the running of deficit or balancing budgets has been the subject of considerable political debate. What is your intention and why? Shari Lukens.
Well, the economy is our number one priority, and that's why the Conservatives have a low-tax, balanced budget plan to protect our economy. And amid the global economic turmoil that we are experiencing today, it is important that we continue with the strong leadership that we have under Prime Minister Harper and the Conservative government, because on October 19th, there could be consequences. The wrong government decision on taxes, on spending, and on deficits will upset our fragile economy. And it's something that could cause business closures and affect jobs right here in our community. The plans put forward by the other parties are plans that involve dangerous tax hikes. The Conservative government is the only government that will not be raising your taxes. Today, Canadians enjoy the lowest tax in over 50 years. That's since John Diefenbaker. And we have lowered taxes 160 times.
Thank you. Randall Garrison. Oh, sorry.
I think it's
David Merner from the Liberal Party.
Thank you. Deficits are something that the Stephen Harper government knows very well. They've run 7 straight deficits. They claim they're going to balance the budget, but they've run 7 straight deficits. Paul Martin and Jean Chrétien handed the Conservatives $13 billion in surplus. Harper frittered it away. So we're saying the Conservatives have no credibility on the issue of deficits. But deficits aren't bad on their own. What we should do with our deficits is invest in the economy and get the economy moving, and that's exactly what we're proposing to do. We're proposing a $125 billion investment in public transit, seniors facilities, childcare facilities, to get the economy rolling, get small business rolling, get construction rolling, because, as I said earlier, this government's record, the Stephen Harper government's record on the economy has been a disaster. One of the worst employment records since the World War II, and we can turn that around with the right investments. We will run deficits, small deficits for 3 years, and then balance the budget.
Thank you. Shari, did you want to follow up for 30 seconds?
Yeah, please. Actually, the deficit has been reduced from $55.6 billion down to a $1.9 billion surplus. And today we're running just over $5 million surplus. So I would say that the Conservatives are doing a good job. It is a very fragile economy, and with the leadership of Prime Minister Harper and the Conservative government, the taxes will remain low, and you will have the lowest taxes in over 50 years.
Thank you. The next question goes to the Green and NDP parties. What are your party's intentions with regards to corporate and personal tax rates? Frances.
We need to reduce the, go back to 2005 when Harper brought down the tax rate from 19% to 15%. And we want to bring that back up again. They're not paying their fair share of taxes. Corporations are being getting away with murder. They're having bloated bank accounts that are right now, there's about $600 billion in dead money sitting in offshore and corporate cash accounts that aren't being reinvested in our communities. And we need to get that money working again. So by bringing the tax rate back to the 2009 level, which was 15%, and making sure they're paying their fair share, we can start reinvesting in the infrastructure that we need again.
Thank you. Randall Garrison for the NDP for 1 minute.
Well, thanks very much. What we've said is that the NDP will run balanced budgets, and we'll do that with increased spending, and that'll be covered by raising the corporate income tax rate by 2 points. So it has, as the Green Party mentioned, been lowered, and we think that they can't afford to go back up. The other thing we're going to do is that we're going to close the corporate stock option loophole. And other parties like to say we should increase the tax on those in the top 1%. But if you don't close the stock option loophole, that money will just continue to leak away. So no tax increases for ordinary Canadians, those who work hard every day. But we do think others can afford to pay a bit more to pay their fair share.
And that stock option piece will impact the $40 billion tech sector right here in Victoria.
Thank you.
Well,
Francis?
we said very clearly, if we're going to have a rebuttal here, we said very clearly it does not cover startup options. It's only for those companies that are already operating it and using it a way for their corporate executives to evade income tax. So we said very clearly it doesn't touch startups.
Thank you. Francis,
We
another
need
30
to,
seconds.
thank you. We need to be investing in small business. Green Party is the party of small business. So for starters, we'd be lowering the small business tax from 11% to 9%. And cutting away a lot of the red tape that's making it so challenging for small business. And small business is the driver of our communities. To have small business not being represented by, in this election in the way it has been, and putting all our emphasis on corporations and large corporations is not in the best interest of the many small business people here in Victoria and abroad.
Thank you. The next question is for the Conservatives and the NDPs. Aging infrastructure is a growing concern in many communities. How do you plan to address this issue without offloading the costs on the municipalities? We'll start with Shari Lukens.
Thank you. It's a very, very good question, and one that we struggled with on Colwood City Council is the downloading of costs, and something that I'm very passionate about and making sure doesn't happen. And therefore, having a seat at the table in Ottawa and being able to be that common sense voice is very important. Our government has invested the biggest ever, or made the biggest ever investment in infrastructure in Canadian history. It's 15 times what it was for the Liberal government back in the day. Today, it's over $50 billion. And right here at home, we have invested $32.5 million into the Mackenzie Overpass, $7.5 million into the West Shore Parkway, $17 million into the upgrades at the dockyards, and another 33 with upgrades to Admirals Road. So this government is investing in Canadians and in infrastructure right here in our own communities.
Thank you. Randall.
Well, like Shari, I've been a municipal councillor and been responsible for balancing budgets while trying to meet the challenge of the aging infrastructure. So what the NDP said is what we don't need is the stop-go funding for infrastructure that's come from both the Conservatives and is promised by the Liberals. So we've said we'll give stable, long-term funding to municipalities with dedicated funds from the gas tax so they can plan over the long term. And it's also very important in terms of local employment. We can't have people doing one infrastructure project then being laid off and have to wait till the next one is funded. So again, we're looking for stable, long-term funding that will keep infrastructure investment going over the next 20 years.
Thank you. Do you want to follow up? Sure.
Thank you. Well, we all know what an NDP government does when infrastructure building. We've seen that all too over Island and the building of a highway up and down the island. Bottom line is the NDP is promising billions in new spending with no plan to pay for it. The Conservative government is investing over $50 billion in infrastructure spending right across this country. And in Victoria, we have seen the benefit of that with investment right here at home.
Thank you.
The difference between the Conservatives and the NDP on one hand and the Liberals on the other hand is that we're saying we're going to make a major infrastructure investment, and we are going to make one that will require deficits for 3 years. We're saying,
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I think I have 30 seconds. We're saying that their focus
Okay.
on balancing the budget and their austerity budgets are not good for the economy. That's what's got us into this situation right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Francis, if you
Well,
want to.
yes, I'd love to say something. Thank you.
And I am going to limit you to 30 seconds since David
Okay, well,
grabbed
thank
30.
you.
So.
Well, the Greens recognize that we have a really golden opportunity here to invest in renewable, long-term, sustainable jobs. And we can invest in our infrastructure by these corporate money that is being, like I say, not going into it's being charged at too low of a rate to fund all these things. So within a year of getting the Harper government back on track,
Well,
we'll be
we're
within-
about infrastructure
Well,
at this stage.
yes, but within a year we will have the budget balanced once we get through the first
So
year
we're
of
going to try
inheriting
and
this deficit.
stick to the topic at hand.
yes,
So
thank
that's
you. Inheriting
infrastructure,
this
and
deficit.
I know that I've got some people dying, and I'm going to move on to the next question.
Yes,
No,
thank you.
because you need to know that the Conservatives have
Okay,
invested over
so
15 times
The next
what the
question is
Liberals
for the
did.
Liberals and the Green Party. This question is, there are a variety of ways to view immigration. We can focus on economic immigration, refugees, temporary workers, or family unification. What is your intended focus of immigration policies? David Merner.
We're taking a broad-based approach to immigration, Bruce. What we're saying is we need the kinds of people who can make our economy move. We need to open our doors to immigrants. These are the folks over the decades who have built our country. And the diversity of our country is one of our strengths, so let's open our doors. And we're saying let's allow family reunification. There are significant economic benefits to having parents and grandparents brought into the country. They can look after the grandchildren, allowing the parents to work. It's good for our economy. We're also saying that we have a very proud history in Canada, which the Harper government has destroyed, in opening our doors to refugees. We're saying let's allow 25,000 Syrian refugees come into Canada. Let's welcome them, but also let's do the proper security screening. And what we're saying is we need to invest more in the proper security screening. The Foreign Affairs folks and the CSIS folks and the RCMP folks, their resources have been decimated by the Harper government. We're saying let's invest $100 million into security screening. Let's return to Canada's proud tradition of welcoming refugees to Canada. That's our position as Liberals.
Thank you. Francis.
The Greens are humanitarian by nature, and we realize that we have a country built on immigration and the great work that so many immigrants have done in bringing our country to where it is. So yes, immigration is extremely important, and we need to bring these people in. We believe that we need to, yes, strengthen the security process, but we also need to create a way for people to get here quicker, cut through the red tape. It's not about buying your way into our country. It's about actually coming through the proper channels and actually being seen as a refugee and heard as a refugee and expedited through the process, but with all the right security. So thank you.
And you know what, folks? I think that we need to learn a bit about this format that we go through, so I'm going to change it a little bit.
Okay.
Because I think everybody's dying to talk about all of the questions. So what I'm going to do is the first two people are going to get a minute each. Then the next two candidates who aren't involved are going to get 30 seconds.
That's great.
And the person who started gets another 30 seconds because they were at the beginning. Is you guys okay with that? A little bit, yeah. All right, thanks.
change, good change.
So,
Start with immigration.
so Randall, you get 30 seconds on immigration.
Well, what we've seen from the Conservatives is they've changed our immigration policy away from skilled workers and family reunification to temporary foreign workers. And there are now more temporary foreign workers in the country coming in every year than actually those who would help build our country in the future. And temporary foreign workers are easily exploited and have very few rights. So we want to turn the immigration policy back to what it's always been. Skilled workers who will help build the future of the country and family reunification.
Thank you. Shari.
Well, immigration has actually increased 20% under the Conservative government. Each and every year since about 2006, over 250,000 immigrants have come into Canada. That is a long haul from the 9 years of virtually eliminated the legacy backlogs from the Liberal government. The Conservative government has opened their door, and we're processing not based on how they come in, but we're processing applications based on the jobs that are in the industry and they need to be filled. That's how we're doing it on a Conservative side.
Thank you. And 30 seconds to you, David.
The Conservatives have unfortunately imposed a limit of 5,000 applications for parents and grandparents for family reunification. We're saying that's the wrong way to go. Let's increase it to 10,000. Let's welcome in parents and grandparents. Let's make sure they're being productive in our economy. And I think we should go back to the traditional Canadian approach of tolerance and openness, something the Harper government has really not shown in the last 10 years.
You guys okay if I continue to change the format a bit and give you guys about a minute to chat about this one, if you like, amongst yourselves, or and sort of a general discussion for a minute, and we'll continue that format throughout. So.
Should we do that on the next question then?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that on the next question. I appreciate for everyone that we're trying to make this as engaging as we can and trying to give everyone the opportunity to say their part. So as I move into the next question, I'm just going to review what I'm going to do as a format now. So the question will be to the NDP and the Liberals. Each of those will get a minute to answer that. The other two, Conservatives and the Greens, thanks, will get another 30 seconds, and there'll be a minute for open discussion after that. Does that work for you guys?
Yep.
Everybody nod? We're good? Yeah, sure, we're not. So, to the NDP and the Liberal, how will you address the critical shortage of affordable housing? And that's to you, Randall.
Well, what the NDP has said is we need to go back to creating some non-market housing here for those who can't afford to get onto the housing ladder. And that will also decrease the pressure on the housing market for those who can afford to buy a house. So what happened is we had a very strong cooperative movement over the years and a very big assist from the federal government getting those co-ops started. That funding was eliminated by the Liberals and has remained at zero under the Conservatives. We would also renew the operating agreements for those existing co-ops, which allows them to help subsidize those low-income people living in the co-ops. So that's where we'd start, by revitalizing the non-market sector. And this is also an important way to help address homelessness, because we've got to come up with more non-market housing to get people off our streets.
Thank you. And
David.
down to David. Thank you.
Thank you. The Liberal Party, similar to the NDP actually, is saying it's time to make a major investment in social housing. We have, under our infrastructure plan, set aside $20 billion annually for the next 3 years for social housing. If you Google realchange.ca, you can look on the website there and see that we are talking about a very serious investment in an area which has been cut very seriously by the Conservatives. Let's reinvest now. Let's put money into social housing. Cooperative housing is another option. I've been knocking on doors since January in this riding, and it's amazing the number of cooperative houses in Esquimalt-Saanich-Sooke. They work very well, they're cost effective, so we also endorse the idea of cooperative housing. And also on homelessness, I think we need a multi-pronged approach to deal with homelessness. It's not just about building housing that's affordable for homeless people, but also the social supports. Supports for people struggling with mental health issues, with poverty, with addictions. We need a holistic approach to address homelessness.
Thanks. Let's see. Francis.
Homelessness is a huge issue. 250,000 Canadians are thought to be homeless at any one time. And
So just a reminder, we're talking about affordable housing.
yes, and so affordable housing is critical. And the other thing in addressing affordable housing is there is the transportation issue that is associated with that, because a lot of people have to move out of the cities and into areas where it's more affordable for them to live, which makes them harder. It makes it harder for them to work within the cities. So the Green Party has more than 2 pages on this at greenparty.ca, and it's extensive.
Thank you. Shari.
Thank you. Well, affordable housing is something that the Conservative government takes very seriously. We're establishing the first-time home buyers credit, where they can withdraw more money out of their RSPs than ever before, increasing from what it was before. We've got the tax credit, to which they can associate to legal fees, as they don't have today. We are working with provincial governments to ensure that money is allocated to the homeless strategy, the Homeless First strategy that we have. So work is being done on all ends.
Thank you. Now 1 minute general discussion.
Well, I guess we can say what's happened with the Conservatives is housing has continued to get less and less affordable. And what we've seen are a few band-aids here for those who already have money in the bank. And what we really need is to tackle this question from a much broader perspective. And again, we're going to have to increase a lot of non-market housing, especially in Victoria here, where it's very, very difficult for young families to get going.
I think we agree with Randall on that. The difference between Randall and the Liberals is Randall's folks are going to balance the budget. They're going to bring in an austerity budget in order to balance the book. What we're saying is it's time to invest. Let's put $20
You know
billion
what,
into
there's
the,
no-
let's
there's
put
no
$20
cuts.
billion into the housing sector.
There's no
That's what we're
cuts in
saying.
our plan.
How
When
much are you planning to put in?
Hey,
What's the dollar
David,
number?
There's no cuts in our plan. We look at your plan, you say you're going to cut $3 to
Where's
$6
the
billion
money?
from the
Where's
public
the beef?
service. You know, like your plan has the biggest public sector cuts we've seen since the Conservatives came.
Well, the
to power.
Conservatives have invested $0.3 billion annually into affordable housing, and unlike the Liberals in the NDP, we will not be cutting taxes
Greens want to
do that.
introduce a guaranteed livable income, which will make it easier for all Canadians to afford a house.
Thank you. So, going to move on to the next question. I think that was kind of fun. We okay with that format? We're going to do that again. So, the next question will be the Greens and Conservatives for the 1-minute responses. The continued need to develop cost-effective transit systems in our urban centers is key to economic growth. It's relatively easy to allocate capital to transit, but one of the challenges is the ongoing operating costs. What do you plan to do to support both the development and operation of transit? And we'll start with the Green Party and Francis.
We're looking at all kinds of ways to do this without costing the taxpayer, and one of them is through a carbon fee dividend, which the dividend comes right back to Canadians, and then the other money is coming from a variety of sources, like the raising of the corporate tax rate or bringing it back down to that 2009 level. There'll be extra money to spend there, so once again, not costing the average homeowner or taxpayer. We need to have an integrated transit system. We recognize this. Right now, we don't have a national plan for transit or energy or housing. All the things that are the major issues we don't have as Canadians right now.
But what's your plan for transit?
Is an integrated transit system, so we are looking at more, like for example, the Mackenzie interchange. Instead of spending all that money on one project, we're looking at an integrated system, so we have more HOV lanes, bringing in rail, looking at bringing back the little shuttle that goes from the Navy base over to Colwyn.
Thank you. Sure.
Thank you. Well, when it comes to that kind of funding and infrastructure spending, it's something that the Conservatives are very invested in locally. As there was just mentioned with the $32.5 million investment in infrastructure for the Mackenzie overpass, it's imperative that we think and deal with the issues that we have today in order to build for the future. The reality is we cannot build for the future without dealing with the issues of today, and that's putting the infrastructure in place today to build for the future.
Thank you. David.
Those are fine words. The Conservatives and the NDP are using fine words, but your question was about operating costs and how we're going to handle the investment in public transit. And the truth is that takes a significant sum of money. And the Liberal Party is the only party that's saying we will run deficits for 3 years because it's so important to invest in public transit.
It's not your deal to deal with the operating costs.
And also to help the municipalities with the operating costs. So we are putting forward a concrete plan, $20 billion. We're also talking about the gas tax funds coming to the municipalities, which was a Liberal initiative in the first place under Paul Martin's government.
Thank you.
That's our plan.
Randall.
Well, of course, Paul Martin's government only allocated money from the gas tax because they were a minority government where the NDP forced them to do it. But let's just talk locally. One of the things I'm proud of is I helped get federal funding for the ENN to start on the track repair. And we've got to come up with solutions that actually work locally. So if we get the ENN running again, we can get people from the West Shore to the dockyard and the base. The other thing I'd like to see is in the long term go for is some kind of light rail system. And in the meantime, the provincial government and the federal government have funded the Mackenzie interchange. I've said, okay, if you're going to put the money in, let's make that as pedestrian friendly, as an environmentally friendly, and as cycle friendly as we can.
Thanks. You know, folks, I guess though the question was really about operating funding. You know, we talk about light rapid transit, and we want to build it. We can't afford to operate that as municipalities and where that money comes from. So I'm going to let you guys talk about it for a minute. But you know what? I want to hear about how we're going to pay bus drivers and put fuel in.
The Green Party is going to invest 1 point of the GST into this type of funding and infrastructure so that we can pay for it. And we're also going to have a Council of Canadian Governments that works on a municipal, provincial, federal level.
How else are we going to fund that operating?
Well, I think one of the things we have to do is get the provinces to the table along with municipalities, because the basic problem, as I know from a councillor, and I know Shari knows, is that municipalities only get about 8% of the revenue, and they got way more costs than that. So until we get everybody to sit down and look at this fundamental problem of how the revenues are shared out, we're not going to be able to solve the operating cost problem. but you got to get the BC provincial government to the table also to talk about what's happening with transit.
It has to be worked on through all three levels, and then you have to have a plan to be able to execute on it. And I mean, we can't even talk about amalgamation within Victoria, let alone try and get a plan to work on transportation.
And this is one of the differences of the Liberal Party and Justin Trudeau. Stephen Harper refuses to meet with the premiers. You talk about the three levels of government getting together, but the facts are that the Conservatives have refused consistently to work with the premiers in a collaborative way. Justin Trudeau is a collaborative leader. He listens to people, he works with people, and that's the example we want as a leader of our country. How you doing there, Randall?
Randall, you know what, Randall, can you try and do a little mic check here for us?
Technical problems with my mic. Right?
There we go. So hopefully, are we up and running or no? Okay, good.
I'll just get closer.
Well, no, if necessary, I can give you my mic. But at this stage, we're going to move on to the next question now. This question goes to the Liberals and Conservatives for the 1 minute responses. And I have a one, so it's even better. So payroll deductions are a significant cost to small business. The current collection of EI premiums is far in excess in the need of the EI program. What are your intentions with EI program premiums, the Liberals?
We are planning to make a major cut in EI premiums, and it's true that the Conservative government has been milking the EI program to help deal with this deficit problem. Stephen Harper has a very narrow focus on trying to balance the budget for political reasons. It's one of the reasons that he has the worst economic record of any prime minister since R.B. Bennett in the 1930s, and we shouldn't be using the EI program. The EI system should be about employment insurance. And by increasing the payroll taxes, we're killing jobs. Payroll taxes are the classic job killer. Yet Stephen Harper has been relying on that almost entirely to balance his budget, and we're going to change that as Liberals.
Thank you. Shari.
Well, payroll taxes are not something that the Conservative government has an idea of even increasing, let alone talking about, other than to reduce them. It's the NDP that's planning on increasing them substantially. In fact, the tax additions that they're planning on doing are 10 times more than the reductions that they're planning on giving small businesses. So once again, it's the Conservative government that is there for the small business to make sure that they have the money in their businesses in order to hire us as locals and keep jobs in our communities.
Thank you. Randall.
Well, thanks very much. It's a bit rich coming from the Liberals who raided the EI fund the whole time they were in power, and who also, in their accounting that they've just put out, say they're going to raid the EI fund again to lecture anybody else about what the EI fund is for. And again, it's only the Conservatives who would call expanding the Canada Pension Plan a tax. This is savings that people will be doing collectively so they can have a secure retirement in the future. So between the two of these, I think we have a lot of rhetoric going here on EI that has nothing to do with the realities of what actually people need to do to make their futures secure.
Francis.
Well, taxing the common person who's working there, 3 jobs, it seems that we have the working poor filling up even soup kitchens. It doesn't make any sense, and that the Green Party gets that. So that's why we have a polluter pay principle where we're going to go back after the big corporations and collect our revenues from them so that we can subsidize all the different things that we do need, and instead of the things we don't need, like why are we subsidizing the oil and gas industry and nuclear, for example, when we have all these programs in dire need of support.
Just on the 30-second rebuttal there, the Green Party and the NDP are saying the same thing. They're going to increase, and you just heard it now, corporate taxes by 2%. That
So
is
we're bringing them back to
that is
another
a job
level,
killer.
the 2009 level.
Jack Mintz, one of the most credible economists in Canada, is saying his estimate is that will kill 150,000 jobs.
No.
The NDP and the Green are on the same wavelength on increasing corporate taxes. And increasing corporate taxes
are
is the
half
wrong
here in
thing
Canada.
to do.
Half here in Canada of what they are in the U.S.
Instead, let's do what the Liberals are proposing, and let's cut income tax for 9 out of 10 Canadians. That's part of our proposal. Let's not increase corporate taxes. Let's not kill jobs. Let's
We're not gonna kill jobs.
let's cut income taxes and payroll taxes. We're saying we will cut both taxes. If we're
Canada
elected.
is the best country in the world in which to invest. And why? Because we are tax friendly, and we invite those people in to set up their businesses in order to create jobs and drive our economy.
It's half of what it is in the
NDP is
US.
proposing It may be half of what it is in the U.S., but the reality is businesses are coming here and we are being able to draw and create more jobs
And we're
than what they
ignoring
are in the
small
U.S.
business in the process.
No, small businesses are not being ignored. Small business taxes, in fact, every party is going down to 9%, following what the Conservatives are,
Thank you.
and it's 46%
gonna-
below what they
Small
were in
businesses are
2006.
struggling.
Move on to the next question now. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
I apologize to everyone for the challenges with Mr. Garrison's mic. Hopefully we've got it fixed and he's up and running.
Okay.
We'll find out because the next question is to you. So the next question is for both the NDP and the Green for the 1-minute responses, and then 30 seconds by the others after that. There's been considerable discussion regarding wages and the federal regulation of setting wages. What do you intend to do with the minimum wage, and how will that affect the capital region?
Well, the NDP has a very clear promise to increase the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. Of course, first we have to restore it because it was eliminated by the Liberals. We think that those who go to work every day and work hard should not live in poverty. And so it's very important to start off and set an example in the federal sector. Now, some people will tell you this is very minor. Only 100,000 or so people will get an increase out of this. Yes, that's true. But those 100,000 people will have a much more affordable chance at life than they do right now. So locally, what will that affect? That'll affect all the people who work at the airport, and especially those who work in security at the airport. It'll affect those who work in broadcasting and communications. It'll affect those who work in banking. So it's a start. We also support the provincial campaigns to raise that minimum wage. And you know that if the minimum wage now were what it was in 1970, corrected for inflation, it would be $16 an hour. So what we've done is we've had the working poor falling farther and farther behind because we haven't increased minimum wages regularly.
Thank you. And now, Francis.
The Greens feel the same way about minimum wage, but going back to that guaranteed livable income that we're proposing, that would be a beautiful thing for all the people of this region and Canada, for the very fact that people actually have money that is coming to them to invest in their housing, as we've talked about, the things that they're finding so tough to make ends meet. People under $20,000 would not be taxed, so we can bring that up.
We were talking about minimum wage. You're talking about a guaranteed income.
Guaranteed
wage.
livable income.
What's the cost of that wage?
We're looking at,
How do we pay for that? I mean,
again, from
we're
a
talking about a lot of
carbon
money.
fee and dividend. It has been costed out by budgetary experts. It's online. You can see it. It is practical. It is realistic. And what happens is the people under $20,000 who are in those dire situations will find themselves with the money they need to increase their ability to pay for their housing, their food. And the people that are paying more than that are in a higher income brackets, will pay that back through tax. Comes in as general revenue, goes out as a direct check to the Canadians, all Canadians.
Thank you. Shari.
Thank you. Well, any national program, whether it be minimum wage, whether it be daycare, in order to implement a national program, all provinces and territories must buy in. And I can't imagine that every province and territory is going to do that. Right here at home, if there wasn't a minimum wage implemented, the impact on small businesses would be huge, and they cannot afford it. What's going to happen is you're going to be walking into McDonald's or one of those stores, and it's going to be a computer. So the exact people they think they're going to help, they're going to put out of work.
Thank you.
A national minimum wage can be determined by the federal government. You don't actually need collaboration from the provinces, Shari, but I agree with the point that this is a very minor program. It's the NDP says this is going to save Canadians. It affects a tiny proportion, less than 1% of Canadians. It's an insignificant program, but the NDP are making it sound like they're going to save the world. Same thing with their national
Your party did vote for it.
Policy. You mentioned that the national daycare policy is a huge billion-dollar investment, but it's not going to start for 8 years. Two of the key platform planks
Not
from the
true.
NDP
So
are
we're
not
into
going to
the
get
1-minute
rolling.
Discussion
Yeah.
portion now.
Well, the Liberals like to say one thing and do another in the House of Commons. And so when we put forward the motion for a federal minimum wage, they voted for it. Now they're out campaigning. Important, and perhaps they shouldn't have supported it. So it's hard to know where the Liberals are going on this. But what I think we see more and more is that working people are having a hard time making ends meet. And everything that the Conservatives have done has skewed things toward those who are more wealthy. And so what we really need is a change in Canada to put the focus back on those average families who are having trouble making ends meet.
We need
and
to
the
make-
childcare program, which will start immediately, it will not reach its full amount until 8 years, absolutely. is one of the most important things we could do to make life more affordable.
No child alive today is going to be able to get into that program. It's starting in 8 years from now,
No, it's
and
not.
it requires the provinces to put in billions of dollars. Ontario's already said they don't have the money, and I can tell you, BC doesn't either.
Businesses
Well, it already
are not gonna
operates in
be able
Quebec
to
and
afford
Manitoba.
any tax increases. And what I'm hearing at the door is that people like the money from the universal child care benefit in their pocket so they can do what they want
How can-
with their children's education
You can't say that
or
when there's
daycare.
600 billion sitting in cash accounts of many of these corporations just to impress their shareholders. It's not true.
Thank you.
The money's not being allocated
So
correctly.
that ends our long answer session, and you know what? I'd like to thank the candidates for their flexibility in the format. And
Thank
we've learned
you.
some
Thank
things,
you.
so I really
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Great.
And hopefully that worked for all of us here, both in our small studio and watching. We're now going to go move into 30-second responses. They're going to be in the order of the chairs. Everyone will get the opportunity to do that. The first question will start with Randall, and then we'll move to the right as we go. Ideally, these will be relatively short answers, folks. And should be, we're trying to make these questions as much as we can about the ridings and other things. I do have one Twitter question, though, from JB59. I have no idea who that is. And we'll start with you, Randall, for 30 seconds. How can increasing business taxes help economic development?
Well, if we're talking about small businesses. We're not going to increase small business taxes. We're actually lowering them. And small businesses create 80% of the jobs in this country. So when we're talking about making corporations pay their fair share, there are things we need like infrastructure, there are things we need like a childcare program. And so all we're doing is asking corporations to pay their fair share in terms of those future investments that we need to make Canada more affordable for everyone.
Thank you.
Exactly. Exactly. We're not looking at raising, we're lowering the small business tax rate from 11% to 9%. That's going to help greatly. And by taxing the larger corporations at a rate that it formerly was in 2009, and they managed to survive, we can bring back financial ability to pay for all the many services and grow our economy. And in fact, we should be looking at a clean, green, renewable economy if we want to create jobs, and that's where the really lies.
Thanks. How can increasing taxes help economic development? David Merner.
It can't. That's the short answer, and we think the NDP and the Greens are really off track here in increasing corporate taxes. Corporate taxes are clearly a job killer. The increase that's being proposed by the Greens and the NDP is estimated to kill between 100,000 and 150,000 jobs. It's almost as bad as refusing to cut the payroll taxes. We're going to cut payroll taxes, the NDP and Greens aren't. So the economic plan that the NDP and the Greens are putting forward is disastrous in terms of corporate taxes.
Thank you.
Not true.
Shari.
So 1% of Canadians pay 23% of our federal tax. And we have 40% of Canadians paying over 90% of our federal tax. So the bottom line is keeping the money in the corporations, in the businesses is going to be able to create jobs. It's going to be able to drive our economy. And we need to ensure as a country that we're able to attract and continue to attract businesses here so that we can continue to grow and build and create jobs.
Thank you. The next question, let's go start with Francis in the response is, what is the most important infrastructure project in your riding?
Well, there's so many. One of the most, I think, is transportation, definitely, because it's a large riding that extends from, as we know, Esquimalt-Saanich-Sooke, but it goes all the way out to Jordan River. So transportation would be a key one.
So what's the project, though?
Oh, the project would be working towards looking at an integrated transportation system that includes rail, bringing in those HOV lanes, and making biking safer and more accessible.
Thanks. What's the most important infrastructure project in this riding?
I think that most people would say the Mackenzie interchange is the key. However, there is a debate around that because it has to be done right. If we're creating a Mackenzie interchange and just filling it up with cars, what we're doing is speeding people along to the next traffic light, right? And that doesn't really make sense. So we need, as Francis has said, a more integrated plan. We need a plan to get people onto public transit, and that's what we're proposing as the Liberal Party. Let's make a major investment in public transit, $20 billion a year for the next 3 years to really address this problem. But we're not saying no to the Mackenzie interchange.
What is the most important infrastructure project in this riding, Shari?
Well, I would say the most important infrastructure problem would be the sewage treatment plant. We do know, and I do know from sitting on Colwood City Council, that this is a very difficult thing to get going. The Conservative government has committed $250 million to the project. We need to make sure that the province and the municipalities are working towards getting this implemented, getting it built, and getting it going.
Thank you. Randall, what's the most important infrastructure project in the riding?
Well, I really think that's a question that has to be answered by local government, though I do agree with Shari that it's about time we get sewage treatment started. The other thing I would say is that while I've been the MP, we've gotten over $1 billion in infrastructure investments in the base. And the base is not only important to our defense, it's an important part of our local economy. So when you ask the question the way you do, what's the most important one going on right now? It's fixing the jetties and revitalizing the base. That's the most important infrastructure project that's actually taking place right now.
Thank you. That's actually a good lead into my next question, and we're going to start with David Merner, and that is, what's the most important issue facing service people in the Canadian Army, and what will you do about it? It's an important part of the riding.
It's a very good question as well. What I'm hearing on the base in my door knocking is that the Navy is radically underfunded. The best estimate of how much Harper has cut out of naval budgets is about $10 billion, and it's been done in a very careful way. The budgets have been allocated by Parliament, but the spending hasn't happened due to restraint. The other big issue is underspending for veterans. We have a lot of veterans in our riding, and $1.13 billion has been cut out of the veterans budget. 9 offices have been shut down for Veterans Affairs, and we're going to open up those offices and reinvest in the Navy and in veterans.
Well, actually is it me? Yep. Sorry. Actually, spending for veterans, according to the Auditor General, has gone up 23% under the Conservative government. So I don't agree with that, and we need to continue to work with them. That is a true passion of mine. And then, of course, we've got the procurement strategy for the shipbuilding, over $30 million. It's taken some time to get there, but we're on go. They have cut steel, and we are moving forward with those jobs locally.
Thank you.
And I'm once again glad to hear the shipbuilding jobs are coming. I've been an advocate for those, but they're still not here. But really, when it comes to funding for the military, what the Conservatives have done is they've committed us to the mission in Iraq without providing any more money for the military. And so the other branches of the military, like the Navy, have had to make severe cuts in order to fund the adventurism of the Conservatives in their fight against ISIS. And so what we really need, again, is a stable plan, like for shipbuilding, which will fund the military over the long term. Once we decide what we want the military to do, then we can decide on procurement, what kinds of things they need to do that job.
Thank you. Francis?
The Greens want to be sure that our military has what they need to do their job properly and safely. And we know that they don't even have a proper supply ship. Their ships are in need of serious repair, and that veterans aren't being treated with the respect that they deserve and need. So definitely bringing more funding into place and recognizing that veterans have to have more support. Instead of a lump sum payment, we're going back to treating them with dignity and respect versus treating them like they're an insurance claim.
Thank you. So the next question, we live on an island. If elected and you form government, and we're going to start with Shari on this one. If elected and you form government, what will your message to Cabinet be regarding BC ferries?
It's a great question. We all know how expensive it is. That is a responsibility of the provincial government. As we know, back in the 70s, the negotiations happened between the federal and provincial governments, and therefore it is a responsibility of the provincial government.
So your message to Cabinet is that it's the provincial government problem? I just want to make sure
the federal government transfers money each and every year, and that is indexed. But what I'd like to be able to do is be a voice at the table, talk about what people think the solution is. I mean, you keep throwing money at something, it doesn't mean it's going to fix the problem. We need to have a plan, and the conversation needs to happen, and I would be more than prepared to do that.
Thank you. Randall?
Well, the first thing I think I would say in Cabinet is that we need to have a look at the subsidies on the East and West Coast and make sure that they're equitable. And the second thing I think we would say directly to BC Ferries is no more giving you a tariff break when you buy your ships from shipyards abroad. We can make those ships right here in British Columbia and provide stable, long-term employment that people really desperately need. Two very clear messages, right? Equal subsidies East and West Coast, and no more importing the ships.
The East Coast is associated with the Constitution, so very different.
Francis, question to you. You form government, you're in Cabinet. What's your message to Cabinet around BC Ferries?
Well, we have to have integrated transportation systems, and that's all there is to it. It's so vital. It's part of our highway system. And so we have to start working together, and that's where the Council of Canadian Governments is really vital. So,
But you're the voice for the West Coast, for BC Ferries and Cabinet.
absolutely. That's where we need to work together. We need to work with the local councils. We need to work with municipalities, provincial, and federal to make sure we do have an integrated strategy that works for everyone.
Thank you. David, you're in Cabinet. You're the rep for BC Ferries. What's the message?
What we would say is that the federal government is subsidizing the Newfoundland ferries to the tune of millions of dollars. And they're subsidizing BC Ferry to the tunes of literally hundreds of dollars. The inequity between what's happening on the East Coast and on the West Coast is astounding. It's not fair, and let's look at a solution. We should be treating it, like Francis said, as an integrated transportation policy. The Trans-Canada Highway is a national undertaking, and the ferries to the island related to the Trans-Canada Highway should be subsidized by the federal government.
Thank you. We're going to move into the closing statement portions now. It'll be 2-minute closing statements, just around minutes of what the order will be. So they'll be in the order of Shari Lukens, David Merner, Randall Garrison, and Francis Litman. Once again, I'd like to thank you all for your sense of adventure for the last hour. We'll move into the closing statements, and Shari Lukens, the Conservative Party.
Thank you kindly, Bruce. Well, in closing, my experience on Colwood City Council afforded me the opportunity to gain an understanding of what's important to constituents in my riding. As not only British Columbians, but as residents of Vancouver Island, we have a personal understanding and place importance on good fiscal governance, sound economic policy, and leadership that understand that governments can be the undoing of a region's economic future, or they can choose to be an active partner to its prosperity. I am not someone who believes governments are job creators or sole source providers, but rather government should create an environment where investment, job creation, and prosperity grow. How a government envisions its role here at home and internationally is what defines our future. As a world leader in international investment, Canada offers global investors an attractive tax environment and sound public finances. We are a leading example of a tax competitive and stable economy, and here on Vancouver Island, we have benefited from those policies. The Conservative government's unprecedented investments in the economy, in infrastructure, and in all Canadians are why I am proud to be running as the Conservative candidate in Esquimalt-Saanich-Sooke. On October 19th, I ask for your vote. And before I close, I would like to say thank you to my colleagues sitting here today. It is not easy. It's not an easy decision to put your name on the ballot, and I applaud each of you for doing so. Thank you. And also to the Victoria Chamber and Bruce for hosting us today, and those watching. Have a great day.
And David Merner, political.
Thank you, Shari, for those comments. It's really nice to have you here with us. We've been missing you at the debate.
Hint,
and,
hint.
and it's great to have you join the debate. I think that's one of the elements of accountability in a democratic system. We should be accountable to the questions from people like Bruce. Thank you to Bruce and to the Chamber for hosting us as well. It's great to be here with all of you. The difference between us, it may not be that great, but what we're saying is that the Harper government has the worst economic record since R.B. Bennett in the 1930s, and we can do better. The Liberals have a plan. I think the plan put forward today by the NDP and the Greens is a dangerous plan. Increasing corporate taxes is a job killer. Failing to cut payroll taxes is a job killer. The Liberals have a plan to invest in the economy, which none of the other parties do. We're saying let's make a major infrastructure investment. We have an infrastructure deficit in Canada. We all recognize it. Let's sort it out. The NDP and the Conservatives are in the same boat. They're saying their priority is to balance the budget this fiscal year. And that to us is economic nonsense. We should be investing now. Interest rates are low. We can create jobs, build the economy, and by building the right kind of infrastructure, we'll not just be growing the economy, we'll also be increasing social well-being. So our plan is quite different from the other party's plan. It's a plan based on hope. It's a plan based on a vision for Canada, and that vision applies in Esquimalt-Saanich-Sooke as well. We should be a hub. We already are a hub for technology. It's a $3 billion industry on the South Island, and today, Justin Trudeau announced a $900 million investment in innovation and green technology. That's the kind of future for our economy we want. That's the future that Esquimalt-Saanich-Sooke should be aspiring to. We have a fantastic part of the world here, one of the most beautiful parts of the world. Tourists flock here, technology industries flock here, and let's build the future with some smart investments. The Liberal Party of Canada is the only party that's planning to make those kinds of investments. So I ask that you vote for David Merner on October 19th. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next statement by Randall Garrison of the NDP.
Well, thanks very much, and thanks to all the other candidates for showing up every day. As Shari said, it's not easy, particularly sitting on these chairs. So what I want to say to voters is that your vote here in Esquimalt-Saanich-Sooke is more than just sending a message. It's also about choosing your local representative. And this time, you have a chance to choose someone who has a lifelong commitment to the environment and social justice. But not only a lifelong commitment, but a proven record. I have a proven record on the environment as a city councillor and again as a member of parliament. So you can choose someone who will continue to oppose tanker traffic on our coast, and someone who will continue to work for local protection of our watersheds, and someone who will actually work to get a recovery plan in place for the southern resident killer whales. You can also choose someone with a proven record on human rights and justice abroad. I'm someone who's led international human rights missions in Afghanistan, in the Philippines, and in East Timor. You can also choose someone who led the fight in the House of Commons against Bill C-51 and will go back and make sure that bill is repealed. You can also choose someone who successfully won support from all parties and got a private member's bill through the House of Commons despite the Conservative majority. And that was my bill to guarantee the same rights for transgender Canadians that the rest of us already enjoy. And you can also re-elect someone who has a proven record for standing up for our local riding, whether that's on policy questions, project funding, or casework for our local individuals. But I'd also ask you not to forget the bigger picture. We're just one election away from quality, accessible, and affordable childcare. Just one election away from lifting seniors, working families, and children out of poverty. We're just one election away from a prime minister we can send to Paris as a world leader on climate change. And we're just one election away from proportional representation, which would help make 2015 the last unfair election. Every NDP seat will count when it comes to electing the most progressive government Canada has ever seen. I'm asking for your vote again and promise to continue to work to be an accessible representative at home and an effective representative in Ottawa. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Frances.
Thank you to the organizers and my fellow candidates and everyone tuning in right now. Everything we value is at stake. A healthy economy, a caring society, democracy, and the very air we breathe. Our economy is flat, productivity is down, our dollar keeps dropping, and the middle class is having to run faster just to stay in the same place. We need the government to end its reliance on natural resource extraction. We've watched the failure of that approach and have been subsidizing corporations to the tune of billions, particularly those invested in fossil fuel. Yet oil and gas has not created the jobs as promised. Our country supports 19 million jobs, of which 96% of those jobs have nothing to do with the fossil fuel industry. Twice as many jobs would be created by transitioning to a renewable energy economy. Meanwhile, small business, the true economic driver of the economy, is mired in red tape and dealing with a complex tax system. It's time for the corporations to pay their own way and for the government to get behind small businesses and innovation. Our corporate tax rate is the lowest of developed countries. It's time to move away from the death spiral of natural resource extraction to renewable energy. It's time to seize the potential of clean tech, which is estimated to be in the trillions of dollars worldwide. Countries like Germany have shown the potential of clean, green technology. And we can't wait for another election to address the pressing issue of climate change. We need action now. Greens want to focus on expanding our local economies and support small business with well-paid, clean jobs and stay here. And protect our coastlines from tankers and pipelines. We are the watchdog. We will hold the other parties to their election promises, and we will work with the NDP and the Liberals to stop Harper. We are the only party without a whip vote, meaning that I'm free to vote my conscience
Thank
and
you.
the values of my constituents.
Thank you very much. Once again, candidates, I'd like to thank you very much for your flexibility today. And
Thanks, Bruce.
Randall, thank you for your patience with our technical challenges. Hopefully we got all of those squared off. Thank you so much for participating in the forum. And really, thank you so much for making the commitment to run for public office. It's an incredibly important part of our democracy. And on behalf of the entire
Thank you.
community, I thank you for that.
Thank you.
The Victoria Chamber is pleased to host this forum and two more. The next two forums, Saanich and Gulf Islands riding, will be Wednesday, tomorrow, from noon to 1 o'clock. And then the Victoria riding, Thursday, October the 1st, from noon to 1 p.m. On behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, I'd like to thank everyone for watching and participating in the Twitter feed. I would welcome feedback from anyone, since we're going to do this 2 more times. We made some changes, we'll make some more.
New chairs.
Definitely new chairs.
I encourage everyone to continue that discussion in whatever way that works for you. If that's continuing on Twitter, go ahead. If that's walking over and having a cup of coffee with your neighbor, stay engaged. Make sure you get out and vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Bruce.
you.